Ukraine Crisis Media Center continues its work, and now I give the floor to Mr. Alexander Huk, Principal Deputy Chief Monitor of the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine, with weekly updates from the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission. Mr. Huk, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Last week, the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine recorded 3,286 ceasefire violations. All of them committed by the sides who promised they would no longer commit such violations. In fact, they have promised not to use any weapon any longer. Last week, we observed weapons in violations of the respective withdrawal line 86 times, 32 in government and 54 in non-government controlled areas. Of note, our monitors saw 12 multiple launch rocket systems in Bakhmut, 4 multiple launch rocket systems near Novoambrosivka, and 2 multiple launch rocket systems near Shimshivnika. Last week, the OSCE SMM saw mines all along the contact line. We even observed freshly laid anti-tank mines just inside the Solote disengagement area, about 120 meters from a so-called LPR checkpoint. We saw how the sites have trenches in some places, new ones even closer than previous ones, and fortified positions within a few hundred meters of each other in Stanica Luhanska, Yasinovata, Pikuzi, and Vodiane. We saw military positions with armed men and hardware embedded in civilian areas of the Trudovsky area of Petrovsky district in so-called DPR-controlled Donetsk city. Dear friends, this catalogue of non-compliance is nothing new. In fact, every week I stand here and outline the same thing. Every week, implementation is delayed, and every week there is a cost. Since I spoke here last, the OSCE SMM has confirmed that an additional 6 civilians were injured. 2, a man and a woman, were injured in separate incidents in the Trudovsky area. The woman was about 700 meters from a so-called DPR checkpoint, while a man was 350 meters from the same checkpoint. Those firing are responsible, but there is also at least a moral culpability for those effectively using the civilian population as a human shield. Dear friends, in addition, last week we saw how the sites relentlessly turned the screw on hundreds of thousands of civilians. In Novoalexandrivka and the Trudovsky area, we observed damage from shelling to their homes. In Solote and Shastia, we observed how people yet again wait as entry-exit checkpoints remain closed, forcing them to take long detours to reach neighbors and friends just a short distance across an imaginary line imposed upon them. In Kruta Balka, Novoalexandrivka and Pikuzi, we saw people largely cut off from the outside world, isolated, without basic necessities of life. Everywhere in the east, we see people struggling. Industry and agriculture are impacted as traditional markets are cut off by the contact line. Basic utilities, such as water, electricity, and gas, are absent or regularly interrupted in many places, as the same imaginary line cuts across the infrastructure. Shell damage is frequent and repairs, despite facilitation from the Joint Center for Control and Coordination and monitoring by the OSCE SMM, cannot keep up. All of this is happening as winter begins. Dear friends, this need not happen. A conscious, deliberate, man-made tragedy is unfolding before our eyes. People's homes are being damaged and destroyed because the sites refuse to cease fire. People are being killed and injured, and electricity, gas, and water infrastructure are being destroyed because the sites continue to place hardware and personnel in and around civilian areas. People's livelihoods are undermined because the sites refuse to open routes across the contact line. People cannot feed themselves because farmers cannot plant or harvest as the sites have planted mines in their land and refuse to remove them. Dear friends, after 3.5 years of utter contempt for the civilian population, after 3.5 years of civilian casualties and the destruction of everything they hold dear, it is now clear that what we are witnessing and what the civilian population of eastern Ukraine is experiencing can only be seen as a systematic, violent onslaught on their lives and livelihoods. The irony is that the sides claim they are fighting on behalf of the same people they are attacking. They claim they are protecting those they put in harm's way by placing positions in or near their homes. It is a mystery to me how one can claim to fight for people or protect them, while at the same time kill and injure them, destroy their homes, and impoverish their families and communities. It is evident that this conflict is not being fought on behalf of the civilian population. It is being waged by people who have committed to ending it. Dear friends, over 3 years ago, the sides recognized and attempted to stop this descent into madness. They agreed to cease fire, withdraw heavy weapons, and demine, and subsequently agreed to disengage forces and hardware. Dear friends, the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission is not in the blame game. The 505 SMM monitors in eastern Ukraine report facts. Facts as opposed to propaganda, innuendo, and unsubstantiated opinion are essential for informed policy and decision making. Facts matter. Facts matter also if we want to avoid an even greater tragedy or other threats. Without facts, there is no early warning mechanism. The facts are clear. The sides have not withdrawn weapons. We and the civilian population of eastern Ukraine see them every day. The sides have not demined. We see mines every day. Of the more than 400 civilian casualties this year, more than a quarter were from mines and unexploded ordnance. The sites have not disengaged forces or hardware. We see them in close proximity all along the contact line. Not only does this result in ceasefire violations, last week we recorded 3,286 such violations, but it also inevitably means the number of violations will increase in the future. Experience has shown and vindicated our warnings on every occasion that escalation is inevitable. We have seen escalation before and warned in advance. We have monitored and reported the facts showing the danger. Every time, these warnings have been ignored. Every time, the sites have chosen to maintain their positions in close proximity. Every time, the sites have chosen to keep heavy weapons in the security zone, and every time there has been escalation. Dear friend and dear friends, it is time to recognize facts, time to face reality. So long as weapons and personnel remain in place, not only will violence continue, but it will escalate. This is a fact. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hook. Dear colleagues, do you have questions?
Christian Hirsch, Austrian Television. We have currently a debate about a new resolution of the United Nations concerning a kind of support operation of soldiers, of armed personnel of United States members, United Nations members, concerning protection of the OSCE mission in the territory not under control of Ukraine. How do you think this mission could really help to protect the OSCE observers?
Thank you. First of all, I have to be very clear, it is the UN Security Council who will decide if, when, how, when such a operation will be put in place. The OSCE Special Monitoring Mission has its mandate from 57 participating states, which will expire in March next year and requires a consensus decision to be extended. The risk the mission faces are the following. The vast majority of the risks the mission faces are those posed by mines and unexploded ordnance, as well as the risk of being caught in crossfire. Direct threats like we have reported this week are the rare exception, and therefore, ultimately, it will be the sites who are best placed to mitigate these risks that I have just outlined.
Thank you. If there is no more questions, that will be all for today. Thank you.